Hi, I'm Eileen McIntyre, Creative Director at Ventura Design, and you're listening to Shut the Front Door, a light-hearted podcast that will bring you through the front door and into the homes of influential and interesting people. Home for me is one of the most important things in my life. My career has fortunately given me the opportunity to work closely with people and to help them create a home they will cherish forever. Today we are speaking to Sean Lemass, founder and MD of SDL Exhibitions, one of Ireland's leading event organisers for over 40 years. Their nationally recognised events include the Ideal Home Show and the Irish Motorbike and Scooter Show. As you may have gathered from his name, Sean hails from a political family and was the first grandchild of Sean F Lemass, Taoiseach from 1959 to 1966, and a leader who is widely regarded as a father of modern Ireland. Sean's mother and father were also members of the Irish Parliament, when his mother, Eileen Lemass, later became an MEP from 1984 to 1989. Sean is a keen sailor and has participated in yacht racing and cruising in both Irish waters and the Mediterranean. Wife to Ruth, father of two, and grandfather to three, I'm delighted to welcome Sean to Shut the Front Door. Hello, Sean.
Hi, Arlene. Good to hear from you. How are you?
I am good. How have you been managing during the lockdown?
Well, it hasn't been too bad. Obviously, our business was hit fairly badly because we're exhibition organisers. But we got into a routine pretty quickly, and I think that's really key to it for people who are maybe confined to home or that. If you have a regular routine, I thought the time passed very, very quickly. Too quickly, really. I'm not entirely happy to be back working all the time again.
I know. I was kind of getting used to that kind of different pace, It's
for sure.
Yeah.
But we're gradually we're back in the office. There's three of us in here today, and But I think working from home is going to become more the norm as we move forward. It just it saves people. People are worried about coming on public transport and so on. So we can facilitate that really quite easily in our business.
Definitely. And how do you think Ireland's done in terms of managing the pandemic? Do you think we've done a good job?
Well, I think laterally, initially, I think we made some terrible mistakes with allowing people come in on flights from infected parts of Europe and Italy in particular. We did the right thing cancelling the Italian rugby match, but then we let all the Italians arrive in and go boozing in all the pubs of Dublin. And then we sent people. Then we let everyone go to Cheltenham, from all around the country, all different parts of the country, and come back. And there's no question, but that made it a much steeper mountain to climb when we finally got around to tackling it. I think we're good now. We're improving, and there's a much better awareness. But we need everybody to play the game, really.
For sure. And how is the events industry looking for the remainder of this year, do you think?
Well, we looked through the whole thing. We've done all the work, and we've looked at a lot of international events, and the European Event Industry Association has been working with us. And we figured we were going to go back under phase 5, which is now phase 4. So we see our events for less than 5,000 people at any one time as being falling into phase 4, similar to like shopping centres or big department stores. And so the plan is that events scheduled for September and thereafter will in the venues will go ahead. Yes.
And what's your view of wearing masks? And do you feel like wearing masks will be something you'll need to incorporate into all the future exhibitions?
Well, I don't think we can force people to wear masks in that setting, but we do intend and are working on the protocols and the physical infrastructure for people as they come to the event. So the plan is that everyone who, as they come to an event, they'll have separate routes, like you would at, say, at Lansdowne Road, different access routes. Mm-hmm. So when you register, and you'll register, everyone will need to register in advance. They'll need to register to arrive at a particular time, so that we don't get peaks or too many people arriving at once. And they will come in through their designated entrance. They'll be temperature scanned. They'll have an automatic barcode or QR code reader and a turnstile so that they can come into the venue then without coming into physical contact with our staff, which is normally the way it's done. Normally you hand your ticket to someone who scans it and then you go in. So we'll do all that. We'll have all the hand sanitizer. We'll have masks available for people, but you can't really force them to wear them. But I think it's very important that we give every visitor and every exhibitor confidence that there's nobody in the hall with symptoms. And if if that's the case, I think people can relax a little bit. They know it's a safe environment, and they can go about their business.
Exactly. Gosh, well, we're looking forward to that all coming back soon. But for now, Sean, I'd love to chat with you, if I may, about your first childhood memories of home.
Oh, well, I was the first child. I have 3 sisters. We lived in Stillorgan when I was born first. And, I suppose I had a happy childhood. I had no problems through the whole thing. But politics is a very volatile career. And we moved house quite a few times. And it's really... That's really the reason I didn't go into politics. I suppose one of the main reasons is it's you can work very hard, you can get yourself elected, you can work very hard, you can do all the right things, and then goodness, someone else comes along and wins your seat at the next election, and you're out of a job. It's not as bad now, but back in the 50s and 60s, that was very difficult for families, and there's more support now for politicians or TDs who don't get re-elected, but it was difficult. So we ended up moving really for financial reasons a number of times, which I think I took in my stride. But you don't know, were my siblings affected by it? The younger ones, I don't know. But it's part of that. That career it's difficult, and I admire people who take it on. I really do. I got involved in Fianna Fáil. I was on the national executive for 1 year, and then I realised that it wasn't for me, and I moved away from the political career.
And what was Sean Lemass like as a grandfather?
Well, we were just a normal family. We'd have turns of Sunday lunch. We'd all go up to the grandparents on Sunday lunch, and he would contemplate things. You'd see after dinner he'd walk around the table smoking his pipe, and have you could tell he was going through things. He had read a lot on other political leaders on economics, and he was a keen fisherman, fly fisherman. That was his sport. He was also a golfer, and he loved going to the races. He was very. And I still actually have his field glasses, really? which came to me for horse racing. But he committed his life from a nerd from 16 years on. He committed his life to serving the country. I was in the GPO in 1916 as a 16-year-old, and. Continued and I think made a great contribution throughout his life to to Ireland and the progress we've made since then. And
what was can you describe your family home to me? What did it look like from an interior design kind of perspective?
Well, initially when we lived in Stillorgan, it was a 3 or 4 bedroom semi-detached house. I don't remember much of the detail. We ended up living for a number of years on Butterfield Avenue, close to where I am here in Rathfarnham Village, in a very good sized house on a good bit of ground. It was rented because that's the way things were with the political career. But it was a very spacious. Maybe 5 bedroom, it had a big, what we called the playroom, which was like a little ballroom, where as I came into my teen years, I was involved in a band. I wasn't very good with music, but I was the manager, and the band would practice in the playroom, and just went to Turrier College. I could cycle or walk to Turrier College from there. And eventually I went to Cathal Street, College of Catering. And from there, I ended up going to the States and studying in Cornell.
Fantastic. So you did travel. You traveled quite a bit then. Share a little of those stories with us.
Well, I think from as it happened, my father was helping an oil guy who wanted to build a refinery down in Bantry Bay, and he was the contact here as they tried to, as you know, there's an oil installation in Bantry Bay, and they wanted to build a refinery. That never happened, but there was a contact, and he was on the phone to his chap there. My father would keep all his notes in his pocket, and he was going through. Looking for something for this chap, Paul Rochelle was his name, and he said, "Oh no, that's a note for my son to try and find him a job for the summer." And Paul Rochelle said, "Oh, what age is he? I think I was 16 or 17. He said, send him over to New York. He could work in our office for the summer. We always need male boys. So, and it happened. It just happened. And I next thing they send the tickets. The Americans, they're great. Yes. They're so generous. They send the tickets. They pick me up. I lived with the owner's son, who was close to my age and is still a good friend, Michael Shaheen. And we, of course, we did all sorts of things. I remember hearing Bob Dylan in Central Park in New York in 1968, and it was there, and that sort of thing. We also drove cross country a couple of times, and it ended up anyway that when I finished Cathal Brew Street, there was nothing happening in Ireland. There was no prospects. Things were very bad, but I had made contact with the Hotel Sales Management Association in New York while I was there working, and they convinced me to see if I could get into the School of Hotel Administration in Cornell, and I drove up there, did the interview and so on, and got a place, and did the Bachelor of Science degree over in 2.5 years. It's a 4-year degree program, but they gave me credit for a lot of what I'd done in Cathal Brew Street, so I could complete it in a shorter time.
Fantastic. And then when did you return back to Ireland, and just how did the whole Ideal Homes show come into play?
Oh, well, I came back to Ireland about 75, and again, there was nothing happening here. I think it was very difficult to get a career start. I did some interviews with public sector and different people, but my father was also a friend of P.V. Doyle, and P.V. Doyle, he set me up with an interview with P.V. Doyle in the Burlington. And he put me into banquet sales in the Burlington Hotel, which was, and from there I met a client, an exhibition organizer from the UK, who was running events in the Burlington. He offered me a job. I think he was looking for credibility with the association, the name and the politics as much as anything, but I took it. And sure enough, his name was Alan Wright, and sure enough, after a couple of years, his past caught up with him. He'd gone bust in the UK, and eventually his past caught up with him, and I had nothing. There was nothing for me to do, only bail out. I had to resign, and at that point, there was nothing for me to do, only start running exhibitions myself. And we'd had one client, the Materials Handling Institute of Materials Handling, who we talked to about running a materials handling event, and palletization was only coming in there, forklift trucks and all that. And they'd said to me, get rid of the English guy and we'll give you the show. So that started it. And we ran MoveX in 1977, Phil Simmons Court. And for many years, we just ran really trade and industrial exhibitions. It's only the first consumer show we did was the boat show in 1989. And we moved more into consumer shows then. And in fact, we've downsized now in the last couple of years. We've sold off our trade shows and we're just running a couple of consumer shows. We're just trying to get a better work-life balance at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a lot of, hard work. I don't think people really appreciate how much goes into organizing and creating an exhibition.
Well, there are a lot of moving parts, but we are doing it a long time, and it was becoming a bit like Groundhog Day, same thing. And we did attempt to sell the business there 2 years ago, and we had some good offers, but it didn't happen, and so we downsized. We sold the trade shows to the Business Post, and now we're just running a couple of consumer shows, which is much more manageable. It really takes the pressure off. Yeah, and we can do it. We have a good team for the events that we run now, and so we're not. It suits us fine,
How many exhibitions have you put out to date? Do you think
over the years? I don't know, but it must run up into the hundreds.
Wow.
Well, we were running 7 or 8, 9 a year before the financial crash. Mm-hmm. We were running, and we had a team up to 17 people here at one time. But after the crash, of course, only the good events survived, and it was actually worked out better. It's less challenging, and it's actually they're the ones that make the margins. So since the recovery in 2014, it's been really good. Now here we go again. This COVID-19 virus is a problem. But the recession that it's causing is a bigger problem.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I think we needed to kind of look into that a long time ago. It really feels like it's people have. I mean, if you're watching the news, it's been coming and people have been trying to talk about this for a long time. But it's something we have to face and deal with pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Like as a country, we're in a good position because our main earners are our IT and life science, our pharmaceutical industries are our big exports, and they'll go on. In fact, the pharmaceutical industry is booming because more people are buying the drugs more. So I think as a country, just like after the last crisis, we're in a good position. But it's the SME sector, it's the self-employed, and that are worst affected, and of course the hospitality industry, and it is a recessionary problem in that budgets are cut, budgets are tight, and so people haven't got the money to spend, and that affects all the service companies that support those industries, including the event industry.
Yes. And do you see like your Ideal Homes show going ahead perhaps in the autumn of this year? And what kind of changes will be involved in that, do you think?
Well, as you know, Eileen, we postponed the spring event to the autumn. So we have, if you like, we have that in the bag. It's there. There's 200 exhibitors already booked, 3,000 square meters of space, and we would hope to sell more space. There's only a few hundred square meters left in the hall. So I've redrafted the floor plan, and we're going to start selling in the next couple of weeks. But undoubtedly, we will lose exhibitors who've gone out of business since the spring. And so we don't know yet. We don't know what the extent of that will be, and we don't know how much more space we can sell. And then we don't know what the consumer side of it is going to be like. But I'd be certainly, from what we're hearing, there's pent-up demand. People haven't had anything to spend their money on in the last 3 or 4 months. So there's budgets there, and just with a bit of confidence, just like when the Troika left in 2013 or 2014, when the Troika left, it was like switching on the light. Everything started again. And I certainly think it's just a recession is primarily a mindset. It's people hold back because they're concerned about what's down the road. And once I think we have this under control, certainly the earning capacity and the wealth is there within our society for everything to kick off again, from restaurants and cinemas to concerts and to retail, which is really what the Ideal Home Show is. It's a concentrated retail opportunity for homeowners, and the fact that people haven't replaced their kitchen or their bathroom or their furniture for 6 months means that the demand should be there, and the show facilitates the transactions if people are in the market.
And I remember you once telling me that you worked with in the Point Depot. Is that correct?
We were the first people to book the Point Depot. At the time, the RDS was a difficulty, if you may recall the 80s. Yeah. They were considering selling up in Ballsbridge and moving to Punchestown. And that was, of course, really difficult for the people who used the venue and ran events there, as we did at the time. And so when the Point Depot building came on the market, we were actually underbidders with a number of the contractors in that to buy it. Now, I'm glad we didn't get it, because it actually sold for £1 million. Wow. Pounds at the time, and but it took a lot more to get it refurbished. And so Harry Crosby bought it, and I knew Harry, still do, and I wanted to support that because I felt we needed an alternative venue. And I actually got the Fianna Fáil Ardèche to book it. Unfortunately, somebody higher on a higher pay grade than me got it back into the RDS. But we ran the boat show there. We ran transport shows, engineering shows, marketing shows. We ran a number of different events there in the first years that it opened. It's not really possible anymore that it's been refurbished. The space isn't there, and of course the concerts have much bigger budgets. So they are concentrating on concerts and seated events, whereas the space doesn't really suit the layout of an exhibition anymore.
That's true. Like that whole area, the whole landscape of that area has really changed around the Docklands. It's, where you're based and where your show is actually, it's really great to get to and get out of. It's been well thought out of, but rather it's been very well thought out, the planning and in all of that.
Yes, the RDS is very central and it's known. And we 20-30% of people come by public transport with the Dart line nearby, which is good. There are problems, of course. There isn't enough parking, but at peak times. But we've, in a way, that's the first world problem. If there's too many people trying to come, it's a first world problem.
But that might change, if things are just organized differently now, moving forward, that might change also. So.
Well, exhibitors have said to me, look, if all this means that there are less visitors attend, he said, that's great. He said, because the people who are interested, the serious ones, will still come. And I'll have more time to talk to them. And that's really as important as having the gangways crowded all the time.
Yes, 100%. That's so true. Quality rather than quantity.
Yeah. For sure.
And Sean, if there was one thing you'd love that you could pluck out of the whole experience of pulling together an exhibition, what would be that one thing that you love the most about it?
Well, obviously, it's gratifying when you finally get it on. We're project oriented, so we might be working 6 months, 8 months or more on a project, and when you finally come to execute it and it takes place and it works, that's very gratifying, of course. But from a business perspective, we've always tried to focus on the growth areas where we can see, because that's where exhibitions work. If we're bringing buyers and sellers together, that's our little corporate slogan. We bring buyers and sellers together, but there has to be a demand. There has to be activity, and so we've run events as I mentioned earlier about when palletization was started. Everyone wanted to forklift truck and a pallet. We ran an exhibition for a few years, but then it was all done. And that events died away. We ran events for the electronic manufacturing industry for many years. And that sector, we don't do electronic manufacturing in Ireland anymore. That moved to Eastern Europe. And I bumped into one of the guys a couple of years ago that I knew from, and I said, how's the electronic manufacturing going in Eastern Europe? Oh, he said, that's gone to Korea many years ago. It's moved on again. And we ran the computer show, was our big show for many years, Computex, which came out of the electronic show. So we were watching all the time where the growth was, new technologies, new growth, and new things. In a way, Ideal Home Show and consumer shows are different. The Ideal Home Show in London is going for over 100 years, through 2 world wars. And so it's more consistent, if you like, and it isn't. What's also happening, for example, we ran an exhibition in Cork for the chemical and pharmaceutical industry, again, a manufacturing industry production equipment show for many years, very successful event. But then it became where that the engineers were just getting a plane and go to Akima in Germany, where they could see 1,800 exhibitors instead of 200, and for £100, and it's a day out of the office either way. So we couldn't get them. We could get the sellers, but we couldn't get the buyers. So we moved on, and consumer events, very few people go to London to the Ideal Home Show there from Dublin. So it's a local market, and so that's is more sustainable, if you like.
Yeah, the Ideal Home Show in the UK goes on for weeks. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, less than it used to go on for 4 weeks. It's 2 weekends and the week in between now are 2 full weeks with the weekends at each end. So it's slightly over 2 weeks. I know the organisers. I've been to it many times. Obviously, they've had to postpone now again. They actually, that show was built in Olympia last March. All stands were in place when they postponed it. Wow. It was ready to go. And I had been in contact with them, and they said, "Yes, we're going ahead. And that happened to us in 2001 with the boat show with foot and mouth disease. The show was to open on a Wednesday. On the Friday before, the Marine Federation, for whom we ran the show, they owned that show. We ran it for them. Having said, we are running this show, read my lips. We are not putting it off. We are not pulling the show. They brought me on the Friday and said, we just had a call from the minister's office. He won't open the show. It's not in the national interest. can you pull it? So I said, okay. I said I did it, and of course we took financial responsibility. We just ran it for them, paid them a fee, but we pulled it, and but fortunately, as it happened, that show was every second year. So we said, okay, but we'll just put it back a year. So we ran it the following year, and that was fine.
Yeah. And what's your opinion on virtual exhibitions?
We ran, in fact, I mentioned the chemical and pharmaceutical industry show there. Back, it must be 20 years ago now, we ran a virtual version of it. An Israeli company had put the software together. They came and saw us. It cost, I think, about $30,000 at the time, but we got AutoCAD to sponsor it. And we ran it alongside the show, but it didn't really work. And certainly, while we have run an online version, and there is on the website at the moment an online version of the Ideal Home Show. In other words, you can browse the categories of exhibits, the zones, the different products you might be interested in, and find all the suppliers and get their information and link to them and contact them and so on. It's hard to monetize it. It's a service. It's an additional service for our exhibitors. That's the way I see it. And if somebody this autumn isn't comfortable traveling down to the RDS, they can visit it online, and they can find all the products and visit all the websites of the 200 exhibitors, categorize it and we put a lot of effort into how it navigates, how the user interface works. So you can just go on to idealhome.ie and you'll see the product finder there and the online version of the event. And we're going to continue with that now. But it's just an additional service to help exhibitors get a return from the event. It isn't a business in its own right.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of the show house, that's always a big draw for you, so, isn't it? I mean, we've done 3 show houses with you, and
you have, and they're fabulous, and people still talk.
They've always been so successful for us in terms of meeting new people and reaching new people we would never have met.
But you put a huge effort into it, and that's the thing. And every exhibitor, the return they get depends on the effort they put into it. Sometimes companies come along, pay us a few pounds for a stand, and expect the business to rain down on them. And they will get some business. But when someone like yourselves go in there, put the effort in, put the branding on it, do the promotion, show ideas, get into how it all works and what people are looking for, you'll get the best return. And we love having, brands involved, but brands that are not just big names, but that get actively involved.
For sure. It's not enough to just be the brand. You've got to put the elbow grease behind it. Yeah, for sure. That's
it. I remember Quinn Insurance one time sponsored the show, but they did nothing. They just had a little information stand. They did nothing. So, we weren't surprised that we didn't see them again the next year. But the good sponsors like yourselves, like DFS, like Harvey Norman, particularly Harvey Norman, they put a huge effort. The huge effort into making work and promoting it and that gets them the return.
And it's very enjoyable, I have to say. Again, like we met people we probably would never have met, otherwise through the show. And it's always great to work with yourself and the fabulous Ruth. And we have nothing but praise for our experience with you in the Ideal Home Show, I must say. Great memories. hard bloody work, Sean, I'll tell you.
But the one that still stands out, obviously, is the Great Gatsby show. That was just it was a piece of theatre. And that's what it's about.
Yes.
We really, if we can create theatre, we get a reaction. It's a public are talking to you. You will get a response. The media will pick up on it. The public will take an interest, and that's really the key to making the thing work.
I remember coming in, and I got caught in traffic that morning, and I wasn't there first thing that morning. When you were opening this day 2 of the Great Gatsby show house, and there was an actual queue wrapping around all the way down around through the corridors. It was just hilarious to get into the house. And I thought, wow, this is working.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. No, it really hit the. And we brought over the
Leo DiCaprio's
lookalike from LA, and we brought over a yellow Rolls Royce from the UK, put it in the garden and all that. So it really, the theatre and was fantastic. You know?
Yeah, I think Dermot Gavin did the gardens, if I'm not mistaken, and we had such a good.
Yeah, and absolutely. You know, it was great.
And tell me a little bit about your home and how that came about for yourself and Ruth, your beautiful seaside home.
Well, as you know, we're there since 2006. We prior to that, we lived in a villa type house on Leinster Road, which we had totally renovated. We bought that in '95, and we had to gut it completely. And we did the whole thing of that, and we did it by direct labour. And it was a great house, fantastic. And then I suppose it was a bit of a trophy thing. I'm a sailor, as you mentioned, and I love to have a view, live by the sea. So we found this house on Tabernia Terrace, which is off Sea Point Avenue, and it has a view straight out in front of the sea. It's an 1850s house. But, of course, we always planned to renovate it and put an extension on it. But shortly after we bought it, the whole world fell apart. And so we held back. And we actually had planning for an extension and so on in 2007, I think. But the whole world changed. So we held back. And then, as you know, it's only in the last few years that we've had our extension and our garden done. And we've had the whole house redecorated and what renovation needed to be done. So it's finally where we really wanted it from the beginning, and we really enjoy it.
Fantastic. And where's your favorite place in your home?
Well, I suppose as I mentioned, it has view out over Dublin Bay, so it has a bay window. The living room is on the first floor. The dining room is below that as you come in. The living room is on the first floor. And with this lockdown now, we've gone back using the living room more, and we've got a lovely little fold-out table that we put in the bay, bay window, right? So we'll regularly have lunch up there, or even dinner, and we can sit in our little bay window. The house faces north, but at this time of year, you get the sun in the morning and the evening. Coming in from the front of the house, so it's a comfy little spot, and we'll open a bottle of wine.
It's beautiful, Sean. I mean, it is. It's really beautiful, and the position of it is beautiful, and it's lovely because you have the old meets new, you know, with your extension in the back. It's fab.
Yes, the planning changed. I mean, originally we were going to put on an extension that was in keeping with the older design of the house, but now the local authorities, they don't want you to do that. They want you to make it distinctly different, and of course it works much better to have a modern area with plenty of glass and all that, you know. Works. So the marriage between the old and the new has worked very well. Yeah,
definitely. And just before I forget to ask, your Aunt Maureen was married to the late Charles Haughey.
That's right. My aunt. So Charlie was my uncle, you know, and he went on to be Taoiseach as well, as you know. Colourful character, but a great guy and very well motivated. You know, I know he's taken a lot of criticism, but I'll just tell you a little anecdotal story. When I started this business in 76, Charlie Haughey was a partner in Haughey Boland accountancy practice at the time, and I went to him and I said, I had somebody to help me and take an interest in the business, help me to get it up and running. And I went to Charlie and I said, Charlie, I'm starting this business. I have someone to give me a hand, but I was wondering, would you like to be involved in it? And he said, Sean, thank you very much. He said, but I've made a decision that I'm giving my life to public service and I'm not involved in any businesses. And he had disposed of his interest in Haughey Boland and he just focused his whole life on politics. Wow. Now, you know, if Charlie Haughey was really interested in wealth, he could be Dennis O'Brien or any of those chaps. He could have made an awful lot more money not being in politics. But I believe he was well motivated. I think he probably had a huge ego and he liked to look after himself, but he felt he deserved it. And so there's been a lot of criticism since. But but he was a good guy, and he was well motivated in my view.
And do you have any childhood memories of visiting his magnificent homes, Abbeyville and his...
Well, yes, I do. I remember the house, that Gandon design house, beautiful, beautiful house. And before he died, a year or two before he died, he had the whole family, all the cousins and all that out for a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and a meal they had a big ballroom in that house, and he loved getting everyone around, but he knew he had prostate cancer at the time, and he knew his days were numbered. And but he brought everybody together, and it was a wonderful day. We still have the photos, and we still talk about it. And we visited, as you know, we visited Desire, Ruth and I, and some friends visited Inishvikalon at one point, and we chartered a boat from Dingle, and we were going up the west coast, and I called him on the phone before mobile phones, and he said, "No, you must come out." So we went out. It's a half an hour hike from where you can get off your boat and there's to the house. As we were approaching the house, the moon rose over the house as if to say, "It's here." Yeah. And when we got into the house, that moon was shining over the Skellig Islands, up across the bay, with like a path. It looked like a path on the water. And Charlie looks at this and he said, "I said, that's magnificent." He said, "Oh," he said, "sometimes I think I could walk on it."
Oh my God! He's some character.
But that was the way. That was. And
was it beautifully decorated?
It was very simple. He had big, tall chairs, which Michael McLeamore, I think, had designed for him. About 12 chairs in a big circle, so everyone could sit around to chat and so on in the living room. And Charlie would pick different people. He'd bring him over to sit beside him for 20 minutes and have a chat, and he'd pick somebody else. He'd go through the whole, he wanted to talk to everybody. Although my pal was a Fine Gael blue shirt, and he spotted that straight away and didn't speak to him at all.
Oh. He got snubbed.
Yeah.
So, Sean, how does social media fit into your life? Or does it at all?
Well, really, I have a Facebook account and so on, but I'm really WhatsApp. We've several family and friends and different activity groups on WhatsApp, but I haven't really. I have a Facebook account. I look at what's going on occasionally, but I'm not really one for posting a lot of stuff.
It's important to your business, though.
Oh gosh, yes. More people attend the shows now because they heard about it on social media than from any other channel, right?
My gosh.
Right, more than the radio, which we spend a lot of money, than the newspapers, where we put supplements and lots of advertising. We have a lower budget for our social media advertising, and it produces more of the visitors.
My gosh.
So it's becoming more and more important. And it's also competing with us for marketing budgets. Like, all right, you've got a marketing budget. Do you take a stand in the exhibition and pay us and pay for the stand and pay for your staff and all the time it takes? Or do you just go and put some ads on Facebook? So it is, and it's competing with the other channels, with the newspapers, the print and broadcast media, big time, and is bigger now, budget-wise, than any of them. Yeah. So and social media,
it's very direct and it's fast. It's
yes, for sure, and targetable, and all that, and remarketable too. So if someone follows you or visits your website or whatever it is, you can remarket to them. So all that technology is very important, and we the team here are very astute to it, but we bring in a contractor to make sure we're getting the most.
Yeah, no, it's very important for business. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, Sean, what one piece in your home with Ruth holds the most special memories for you?
In our home?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't really know. I mean, there's so much stuff in our house from our various families and so on. But I suppose when you think about it, the piece that has comes down through the generations is, I mentioned earlier that Sean Lemass used to walk around the dining room table after dinner, smoking his pipe and contemplating what was going on. That dining room table is in our dining room. Wow. We've had it French polished and renovated and so on, but it was my parents' house. And then it was in our house in Leinster Road, and it's with us now. So that's got a little bit of history to it. And indeed, the sideboard from my my great grandmother and my mother, so my maternal grandmother's side is there. So there's bits of history come through all the time, and of course there's lots of stuff from our own lives, but it's like everyone, you're trying to manage the clutter.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but I've seen that table. It's beautiful.
Yeah, we can have at Christmas, we'll get 12, 14 around it, and sisters come home from the UK, and my daughter and grandchildren and all that will come home every second year. It's summer. He has a family too, and so it's great to do that. It's great.
And you're a keen sportsman as well. I mean, you love sailing and hunting, horse hunting, and.
Well, I hunted for many years. We both did. We actually met through hunting, and but I don't hunt anymore. My horse is still with us. He's retired now for must be 8 or 10 years, and but Ruth rides out, and I has her horse down in Bel Air, and I will hire sometimes, and we all ride out up in Carrick down in Ashford. But my main thing is, I suppose, sailing now. But it's been curtailed, of course, at the moment. There's no racing at the moment, and we can't travel down to the Med or that at the moment. But we're hoping to get back at it in July.
Great. And tell me, how do you and your family spend Christmas normally? Is it always at your house, Sean?
It has been, because we have the space and we have the table, but different. It depends on who can travel and so on as to how many are with us. But I think we'll see now this year whether everyone can travel and everyone's comfortable traveling or not.
Yeah.
But my mother's still with us. She's 93, and is Ruth's mother. But unfortunately, we can't get Ruth's mother into the house anymore because she's confined to a wheelchair. So we can't get her up there's a lot of stairs in this old house. There are a lot of steps and stairs, so it's impossible. But we get as many as we can home, and for that day.
Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years, Sean?
Well, I thought, as I say, we did make an effort to sell the business and just retire, but and I'm not sure how well it would have worked out, because we do enjoy the business and running the events. And I think the plan now is to try and get the better work-life balance by reducing the number of events which we've done, and have a bit more time for ourselves and for travel and for sailing and so on. And I think that's really what the future holds. Just a question of how far we go. Do we take the boat across the Atlantic and go sail around the Caribbean, which we've done with charter boats, but we take your own boat, maybe go up the east coast of the United States? That's something I'd really like to do. There's wonderful places to see, and we've friends in New York and Long Island. So that's a sort of on the bucket list, if you like. But we've kind of lost a year now, because my partners in the boat are equally restricted, and we can't really move. The cruiser down in Greece at the moment, and which you've been on with us.
Yeah.
And we're thinking actually of taking back now. We just talked last weekend, and we're thinking of going back to Sicily and maybe south of Italy, if we can get down in July, and maybe leave it in Sicily over the winter again this year.
I mean, it is outdoor. It should be safe, I'd imagine.
It's fine. Yes, yeah. The trouble with the racing side of it here is that you might have 10 people, under 8 or 10, in close proximity, and they're while it's outdoor and all the rest of it, they were waiting on the Sailing Association are waiting on clarification as to whether they can resume competition. I mean, they came out at the weekend and they said 15 people can participate in training, in sports training. That's a football team, basically, but not competition. Because when we're competing, obviously the rules go out the window. You're less conscious of social distancing and so on, particularly with contact sports. But with sailing, we're waiting on clarification. If we can have 15 or even 10 or 8 people together on a boat, that's fine. We can go sailing, but will they allow competition to resume? Obviously, the boats don't except by accident, boats don't contact each other. It does happen, but there's the odd collision. But but I think it's very much an outdoor type environment, and
totally. I think the only thing you need to worry about is those storms, like one of those storms that yourself and Ruth got yourself into the last time.
Well, you need to be prepared. You need to have confidence in yourself and in the boat when if you're offshore, particularly. I mean, normally Dublin Bay are just out for a few hours, but if you're going a long distance, you need to check the weather. And although, as you know, in the Med, you can get these cells that pop up very quickly, but you need to be confident in how to deal with it and in the boat's ability to deal with it. And, it's a very safe sport, really. There have been very, very few, touch wood, there have been very few casualties even in offshore ocean racing, which we've done. But since the Fastnet in 1979, the regulations were seriously improved. And the safety precautions are very tight now.
Yeah, for sure. And just like everything else in life, just like with the sailing and all those things, you've got to think quickly if you run into trouble and think outside the box. And
well, yeah, as I say, don't be if you're intimidated by it, you're in trouble because you'll make the wrong decisions. You need to have a cool head and do the right, do the obvious correct thing, whatever it might be. Sure. But I think that's really, that kind of confidence is key, and it's important in business too. We're in a difficult situation here with this pandemic, and I think a cool head is very important.
For sure, and having the experience that you have under your belt certainly helps as well.
Well, we've been through many recessions. It's a pain in the neck, but look, we can deal with it. We know what to do. We know what to deal with it, and we're resourced to do that.
And Sean, what advice would you give to your younger self?
If I was starting all over again, I don't know. I could probably. When I was in Cornell, the recruiters all come up to the college every spring and autumn from all the big groups and all the big chains. And I remember McDonald's were there, and they were interviewing for managers and executives to join the McDonald's group. And if you were successful, the joke was you had to go to Hamburger University for a month, and we all laughed and thought this was very funny. We were well beyond all that. But, there was no franchise for McDonald's in Ireland at the time. Had I gone, I probably would have come back here with the franchise.
Yeah.
Because it was a good few years later before we actually ever saw McDonald's in Ireland. And so, but you just take the road that's in front of you, that you just follow your instinct and do what you think is right and best. And you can't see back. You can't. Hindsight is great, but it's unfortunately we don't have it. So you just have to make your decisions as they present themselves.
For sure. There was an excellent movie. I don't know if you saw it, with Michael Keaton, all about how McDonald's was founded. Did you ever see it?
I didn't know. It'd be interesting. All right.
Yeah, I must send you all the details of it. I just can't think of the name of it at the moment, but it was excellent. I watched it on a flight to Istanbul, and I was like, "Gosh, that was interesting."
Well, the whole franchise concept is brilliant, and it works really well if you do it right. It's franchises, as we see, particularly with restaurants, but there's franchises for everything.
That's for sure. And I'm going to ask you really quickly what's called a quick round, quick fire questions.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'll give it a go, but I don't promise answers.
Okay. Bath or shower?
Shower.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Red or white wine?
White, usually. Well, red if I'm serious, but, very good red wine. But for normal, because Ruth doesn't eat red meat, we tend to eat chicken and fish and things like that. White wine a lot more white wine gets consumed in the house.
Horse hunting or fishing?
Horse hunting, yeah.
The Mediterranean or the Caribbean?
The Caribbean.
City or country?
I suppose the city, yeah.
Modern or classic design?
Modern.
Sailing or skiing?
Very difficult to pick between them, but you can sail a lot more often than you can ski, so I'd say sailing.
Fair enough. Vacations or staycations?
Vacations.
Donald Trump or Boris Johnson?
I remembered that question. That's just an impossible one. You can't answer that. They're both the same, it seems to me.
Well, look, if you had to go sailing with one of them, which one would it be?
Oh, I think probably Boris is more manageable.
Someone would go missing or mysteriously vanish from a sailing trip.
Oh, yeah, Trump would be impossible.
And the last one is 2020 or 2021?
For what?
For a choice, which year would you prefer? 2020 or 2021?
2021.
Sounds good. New beginnings.
Yeah.
So, Sean, thank you very much for joining me today. And I wish you well. And I hope yourself and Ruth stay safe.
Thanks, Eileen. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Take care.